Hi, I'm Megan Connaughton, a teacher in the preschool classroom in the Deafblind program.
And I'm Amanda Toczylowski, a preschool teacher at the Perkins School for the Blind in the Deafblind program.
Today we're going to be talking about total communication in the deafblind preschool. What is total communication? It's the holistic view of communication, often using a range of modalities or even thinking outside of the box to create a system of communication that works for an individual. Total communication includes a wide variety of modes of communication, including touch cues, gestures, objects, partial objects, tactile symbols, pictures and visual symbols, photographs, print, and high and low tech options. At Perkins School for the Blind in the Deafblind program, we support a total communication philosophy approach to learning. Touch cues are often used within total communication. It's a foundation for engagement to promote communication. A touch cue could be something as simple as a tap on the top of the hand to promote sign language or reaching towards something, a touch on the arm to indicate it's time to go, a tap on the back to indicate that it's time to be lifted, or really any touch cue that's meaningful and individualized to the student. Gestures. Gestures are any physical motion, movement, or facial expression. A gesture is meaningful when the student is engaged with the communication partner. We all use gestures every day. You might motion for someone to come by waving your hand at them. You might hold your hand up in a stop motion. You might point at something that you're trying to reach. This is the same for our students. The student might reach out towards something or even take your hand to reach. Even though it's not necessarily a formal form of communication, it's often a very clear way for a student to get their point across and can be a base for future sign language skills.
Objects. Objects or whole objects can be used as a way to communicate or build communication skills with students. This begins by using concrete whole objects that represent certain activities that happen within a student's day. These objects often are and should be used within the activity, making them meaningful to that student. Here are some picture examples of whole objects that represent an activity. We first have a diaper that represents bathrooming, a bolus that represents feeding or lunchtime. A lot of our students are fed by G-tube rather than a spoon or a cup or a bowl, so this is a great example of using an object within that activity. The last picture is a more abstract object, but to this student it is meaningful. During math, the student likes to count blocks, and so they know that when it is math time, they take the block and the partial objects. So partial objects are pieces of the whole objects that represent a concrete activity. Students who are using partial objects are familiar with the meaning of the whole object and are able to understand that these partial objects are a part of the whole object that then represent that activity. And again, the object is meaningful because it is used within that activity.
And when you're working with partial objects with a student, when transitioning from a whole object to a partial object, it's also important to have them be part of the process. So while you're breaking them down, have the student do it with you. If you're ripping off part of the cover of a book, do it with them. Have them rip it and have them do it again and again until they understand that that little part represents the whole thing. And it just adds a lot more meaning to the activity and helps further the understanding of the partial objects.
On the next slide, you will see a video of a student who is using partial objects to create their daily schedule.
Ready? We're going to make your schedule. So first, we're going to have math. And he's going to have math first today. Let's feel both. Ready? Where is math? Take math. Math, that's right. Now let's put it on our schedule. Up all the way. Good job. Great. After math, ready? Yandi's going to have reading. Feel both choices. Where's reading? Good job. All right, can you put it on your schedule? Ready? all we have math and reading. After reading, you're going to have speech. So both choices. You're going to have speech. Go ahead, you can take it off. Good job, Yandy. Put it on. Good job. So we have math, reading, and speech.
So this student started with using whole objects. After a while, and after repeatedly using the whole objects throughout all of his activities within his day, the student was then recognizing the whole object as being a part of the activity. We then worked on cutting down those whole objects into partial objects. The student helped me cut down each object, and with repetition and frequent use, this student is now understanding partial objects to these really concrete whole objects. Tactile symbols. Tactile symbols refer to a wide range of materials that can be used to support communication. Tactile symbols are used to represent more abstract concepts, such as vocabulary that is not easily represented by concrete objects. In some cases, tactile symbols might spark an experience or a memory that can provide understanding to the student.
Tactile symbols can be great for representing things such as characters within stories that aren't easily represented by an object. But you should also keep in mind that if a student is a whole object user, tactile symbols aren't necessarily right for them, and to be consistent with the form of communication that you're using. Learners who are using tactile symbols would likely be using tactile symbols or partial objects already across activities.
This video shows a literacy activity with a student who uses tactile symbols to represent abstract concepts such as seasons or things we do within the seasons.
Good job. Seasons come and seasons go. Tim loves all of the seasons. You feel them? We've got spring, summer, winter, and fall. He loves all of the seasons. Can you turn the page? Good job. It is winter. It is cold where Tim lives. There is snow. Snow. We see snow in the wintertime. Andy, what weather do we see in the winter time? Ready? You feel both choices? Which one can you take it? What do we see in the wintertime? The snow. Whoop. Right, look. They are the same. Alright. Go back. I'm going to turn the page. Tim makes a snowman. He drinks hot chocolate. Tim loves the winter. When is it going to get warm? In the winter. He drinks hot chocolate. Drinks the hot chocolate. What does Tim drink in the wintertime? Let's go both choices. job. Thank you. He drinks the hot chocolate. And turn the page. It is spring. It is warm where Tim lives. It rains a lot. Feel the spring? It rains a lot in the spring. Yandy, when does it rain a lot? You have choices? Good job. It rains a lot in the spring. They're the same.
So this student uses some really abstract tactile symbols that are given meaning while reading. And some that might be familiar and spark that memory or experience, such as the hot chocolate or the bathing suit.
Next, we're going to be exploring a variety of pictures and visual systems. These picture and visual systems should be individualized for each child's visual and physical needs. That includes the size and both of the image and the print label. And keep in mind, it's always a great idea to label a visual system with print. Even if the student isn't a reader, the label is great for both exposure to print and also to promote consistent vocabulary use between staff who are working with the student. Also keep in mind the contrast. Some students might need it presented on a white background versus a black background. The materials that you're using. If you're, keep in mind if you're laminating, it's great because it helps protect the image, but can also produce a glare. So you might want to think of printing on cardstock to make it a little bit sturdier without that glare. Again, the background of the photo, and also within a picture symbol, you can have it either in color or you can opt for it in black and white. Some students, with the color, they get distracted by the color and they're not interpreting the symbol, they're interpreting more of the color. So we've found that with certain students, a black and white presentation of visual systems is better. Photographs can be used within picture and visual symbols, and a photograph can be either of a person or an object. You can see in the photo examples below, there's solid contrasting background, a dark blue and a black background, and reduced visual clutter. It's very clear that we're just focused on the person's face and of the object in the picture on the right. These are two great examples of the same activity represented by two different types of photos. On the left, it's a photo of the teacher, and they know that when it's time for gym, I go and see Maeve because I recognize her face. For some students, they might not be able to recognize faces or have the visual acuity to be able to perceive faces. On the right, you'll see the same activity represented by a photo of an object. For this student, they had been using whole objects for a long time. They knew the object, and they were ready to transition to a 2D representation. So we started out by taking photos of the actual object and blowing them up to roughly the same size as the object. So the student was very clearly able to match the object to the photo, and eventually it made for a more portable system. Line drawings are a user-created tool. They're different from the more formal picture symbols that we'll be looking at on the next slides. Line drawings are a great way to represent things on the fly. You might be out in the community and your plans change all of a sudden. All of a sudden our field trip, which is the symbol on the left, it's a picture of the van, got changed, and we're no longer going to the library today on field trip. All of a sudden we're going to the circus. A great opportunity came up. You might not have your laptop and a printer with you available to print out formal picture symbols. So this would be a great example. You pull out a piece of paper, you draw the very familiar field trip symbol, a picture of the circus tent and the clown, and all of a sudden you have your line drawings. Today we're going to the circus. Again, keep in mind this is a very abstract representation and should be individualized to each student.
Picture communication symbols. Picture communication symbols convey particular meanings, not just an object. Picture symbols might offer a more formal library with a broad representation of vocabulary. These are easily modifiable by changing the size of the font, the color preference of either the background or of the symbol represented, or the representation. Some frequent types of picture communication we use in our classroom are Mayer-Johnson symbols and symbol sticks.
And keep in mind, picture communication symbols, again, are more of an abstract representation. And keep in mind with them, you see the two different examples here for cooking. One is showing the cooking utensils and the other showing the sign for cooking. Some students might be able to interpret the sign for cooking, but a lot of times we also find that the Mayer-Johnson symbols with the sign language are helpful labels for around our classroom to also encourage signing among staff and sign learners. So they can be used both within the student's communication symbol, but also for labels throughout the environment.
Print. Print or braille labels are commonly used as labels within an environment for students who are learning print-based communication skills. And again, print can be paired with picture symbols and with photographs throughout the environment as a label.
Eye gaze is a visual system in which the user fixes their gaze on an object or symbol to communicate intent to a communication partner. Eye gaze systems range from informal, such as holding up two object choices, presenting one first, allowing the student to look, and then presenting the other on the other side, holding them both up together and seeing which one the student looks at to create their choice. It can also range all the way up to a formal system, which uses a computer with an eye gaze system that can track the student's eye motion. This can be used for anything from simple cause and effect activities, where the student looks at an object on the page and it begins animating, up to more tracking activities where they have to follow an activity across the page, and can also be used in a very formal communication system, where they can look at different symbols or words on the screen and the computer will vocalize it for them. Along with eye gaze, we use partner-assisted auditory visual scanning. This is a communication system that the communication partner manages. Using partner-assisted scanning, items are presented consistently by the partner. It's important to present items in the same order each time and at the same speed, giving the student enough time in between each object for processing time. And again, that would be very individualized to a student. Some students might be able to go through quickly, saying, do you want to play with the ball? Do you want to play with the slinky? Or do you want to play with the wrapper snapper? Whereas other students might need up to 10 or 20 seconds in between each choice. Partner-assisted auditory and visual scanning is defined by consistent response by the communicator. So that could be a vocalization when the communication partner presents or vocalizes the choice that they want, a gesture, such as pointing, reaching, or even a head motion towards it. Gaze, for students with limited mobility, gaze is a great way if they can control their eye gaze and look and fixate on the object that they want, or using a voice output switch that might say yes or that's the one I want, that they press when they reach the object that they desire. We also use a variety of assistive technology within total communication. Assistive technology is a set of tools that are electronic and non-electronic that range from low to medium to high tech. When you first hear assistive technology, you probably automatically go to a high-tech thought, with an iPad with a communication system, or a computer, or something along those lines. But assistive technology actually starts with low-tech. Low-tech is an expressive tool and is anything that does not use a battery. So in the examples below, you can see some choice boards. On the left, it's using picture communication symbols. The student could point to I want, and then they can make their selection. Book, help, eat, sleep, yes or no. They also have the option to request more or say, okay, I like that. On the right, it's a more simple choice board. The student isn't combining multiple pictures at the same time to form a sentence, but instead they're simply pointing at the exact object that they would like to play with. They can then match the photo on the choice board to the object, and it just really helps build a nice connection that they have the power to control what they want. They can point to something on the board and they're going to receive it. Starting with something like a toy choice board is a great way to do that. They learn the connection between pointing and receiving, and then you could eventually build up to adding in more and finished or something different, and then expanding their communication system. Medium tech is an expressive tool that uses a battery, such as a single voice output switch. Some examples you can see below are a voice output switch that's a multi-step, so you can have a few different messages recorded, and when the student presses it, it will say exactly what the switch says. In the middle, you'll see a voice output switch that has two options that are paired with picture communication symbols, and the student can press one or the other. So in this example, during a mealtime, they might request a drink or they might request more to eat using their switch. On the right, you'll see a Go Talk, which is also powered by a battery and is a little more complex. It has up to 20 squares on it that can be added or subtracted and can be used for a variety of things, such as errorless choice making, such as the picture communication board on the last slide, or putting together sentences saying, I want to go to the bathroom, pressing multiple buttons in different rows. High tech is another expressive tool that is computer-based and requires specific training to use. It's a formal arrangement in a container or a book, and it could be found in an app on an iPad, such as Proloquo to Go, or in its own self-contained device. Students who are using high-tech devices should be trained, as should the person who is arranging the pages. There's a very specific way that the pages are arranged, and a specific process should be used before a student starts using a high-tech device.
Speech and voice. Students are encouraged to use speech or vocalizations to communicate with others as they are able to. Speaking abilities range from simple vocalizations that might express likes or dislikes, to utterances, or single words to full sentences. For us in our classroom, we always model speech alongside the other communication methods. Sign language. Sign language is expressed by using movements of the hands and the face. Students might be using sign language as a more formal system of signs to communicate. Approximation of signs are commonly used within our classroom for students who might have difficulty with motor planning. Students who are using sign language as a form of communication might use single signs for labeling or 2 to 3 signs at a time to full sentences. Tactile sign language. So very similar to sign language, but for the student who are totally blind or have limited vision. This is signing while in physical contact with another and is used to allow that student to feel the sign and better understand what is being communicated. And just like sign language, students might be using approximation, single signs, 2 to 3 signs at a time, up to full sentences.
And tactile sign language can be used expressively, where they're receiving it and then signing back, or just receptively, where they're receiving the information but might use a different form of expressive language, such as objects or tactile symbols.
It's always so important when evaluating sign language that we review the student's vision, their motor planning ability, the ability to use visual imagery for thinking and learning, and receptive, how the student understands language versus expressive use, where the student uses words to express themselves.
For vision within sign language, keep in mind, just because a student has low vision doesn't mean that they can't use sign language. You just might have to be more mindful of how you position yourself. Directly in front, maybe as close as a foot away, and maybe some direct lighting around you. And even with motor planning, even though the student might not be able to fully form the sign, that's when we use sign approximations. As best as the student can form the sign while, accommodating their fine motor needs.
So when do we use total communication? Always, always, always. We always use total communication across environments, so within individual academic lessons, during group activities, during playtime, and even during therapies.
So that was a lot. Where do we start? To review the communication hierarchy, we have some examples. And just a disclaimer, this is the order that the communication hierarchy can go in. It doesn't mean that every student will progress from the most concrete to the most abstract example. Some students might start out on objects and become written word or braille readers. Some students might be whole object users from the time they're in preschool until the time they graduate when they're 22, and that's totally fine. We want to stress that it is whatever works best for the student works best for the student. There is no need to move them forward before they're ready, or at all if they're never ready. However they choose to communicate and whatever makes sense to them is what we want to promote. So this is an example of a visual learner. You might start with a real object. Say you're representing mealtime. The object is a spoon. The student might take the spoon, bring that exact spoon with them, and eat their meal with it. When they're done, we'll wash it and put it away in a finished bucket. That object can then become an abstract representation. They can take that spoon, but they might not need to eat with the exact spoon. They can use the spoon to represent a mealtime, even though they might be eating with a fork or eating with their hands. From there, the student could move to a photograph of the object. As I mentioned earlier, the photograph should be on a background free of distractions, typically presented on a black background, but keep in mind contrast. If it's a darker object, you might want to use a lighter background. From photographs, you would move on to a picture, or such as a Mayor Johnson symbol, which you can see on the third image. And from there, we would move on to the written word. Similarly, this is an example for a tactile learner. The student might start with the exact fork that they use, and they bring that fork with them and eat their lunch. And then from there, they could move on to a symbolic object, such as this plastic fork. Then they know that the plastic fork not only represents snack time, but it could be lunch, it could be dinner at home, it could be eating out. It's not the exact object they're going to use, but they have that really strong base of knowledge that a fork can be many things. A fork can be the metal fork that I eat snack with, it can be the plastic fork that I eat lunch at school with, and it could be, a wooden fork that I use at home for a specific activity. From the symbolic object, you can move on to partial objects. As Amanda was talking about earlier, it's important to have the student be a part of creating the partial object. For something like a plastic fork, that's easy. You can break it down over and over. There are a lot of plastic forks. But say you wanted to break down a metal fork. It doesn't sound as easy, and it's not as easy to recreate over and over. Something that we've done in situations like that is you can pre-break the fork and either glue it back together so it's easy to break again, or use Velcro so you can break it over and over. That way you still have the experience of breaking it down together, but you don't have to get involved with breaking metal with a student, which we try to avoid. From partial objects, you would move on to the most abstract tactile representation, which is the Braille word. And again, just to reiterate, not all students will move from the most concrete to the most abstract, and some students might skip some steps along the way. We typically will start with whole objects when a student starts preschool, and we might realize within one day that they have that understanding very clearly down, and we might trial some photos and some picture symbols, and then start throwing in some print. Other students, we might work with objects, and we realize they're an object user, and we start their object world very small, maybe just a few things to represent activities, and one consistent story box. And then from there, once they start building understanding of certain objects, we can expand the world. It's important that we build a strong foundation out before we can go up. Just because a student understands a few objects in their calendar system doesn't mean that they understand all objects and they're ready to move on to a symbolic representation. And no matter where you are within the hierarchy, it's always okay to go back. Oftentimes, when we're introducing a new concept, even if the student might be a partial object user, we'll go back and use the real whole object to gain that really concrete understanding. Concrete are real objects that are meaningful to the student. In the picture below, you see the student's shoe. This was used during a story box that we were reading about getting dressed. Instead of using a shoe that the student didn't know, when we would read the story box, we would take off the student's actual shoe and they would engage with it. And then we would talk about, this is your shoe. And then I'd have them help me take off my shoe. Say, this is my shoe. We both have shoes. And then put them back on together and really develop that concrete meaning. An abstract representation is something that represents another meaning. Something that is very abstract is using fake food or animals, especially within story boxes. A lot of children's stories revolve around food and animals, so it's easy to want to use the fake food, but it's a very abstract representation. So when possible, it's always great to use the actual item, but there are students who can work on their abstract representation, such as fake food. With that being said, a student who is not at an abstract level of thinking can still use abstract objects, but the key there is to use it to focus on concepts. For example, in the picture below, we were working on the hungry caterpillar story box, and we were working on identifying the primary color of the object, not the meaning. So I would focus on the color. I would say, did the hungry caterpillar eat the red apple, or did he eat the green pear? And then having the student match it based on the color. There are a lot of things, as Amanda mentioned earlier, that are just very difficult to represent through concrete objects, and we definitely understand that. So it's always best to, use the concrete object when you can, but we do understand that abstract objects could be necessary sometimes, and to make sure you just put the focus on whatever is most meaningful to the student.
Consistent vocabulary. Keeping consistent words and labels throughout the environments and activities is so important for our students. Keeping vocabulary consistent can help promote authentically learning and understanding and producing language and communication within their environment. So for example, we have a shoe versus a sneaker. So if your student or child is putting their shoes on in the morning or at school, or on the bus, or at night, it's important to know that you are using the same vocabulary throughout each activity, calling it a shoe rather than a sneaker.
And that's not to say that you can't eventually build up the vocabulary. So we could focus on shoe to really build that concrete concept and make sure everyone's using the same thing. But once the student has that down, then you can start introducing the other vocabulary. That a shoe is the same thing as a sneaker, just to build the vocabulary. Again, the important thing is to get that strong base down before we build it up.
Whatever mode you're using should be unique and to the student's level of communication. It should be consistent across all environments. If the student is using real objects to communicate, use real objects across all activities and across all settings. So during reading, at speech, or at home. It's really important to be on the same page with your student's team all throughout their day.
Clear communication between team members and family members can really just help promote this consistent use of communication tools. Just someone might be trying like a new level within the classroom or during speech that they're just trialing out there and they're kind of seeing if the student is ready to progress, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to move up across all settings. And I know that that can get confusing, especially in the school setting. Maybe a teaching assistant might see something different being used at speech and then think that they should be using it in the classroom. But again, the clear communication between team members and family will help keep everyone on the same page and keep the student using that really consistent communication that is so unique and important to them.
Total communication throughout the environment. It's so important to use total communication throughout the environment and keeping it consistent and accessible for all of the students. In the picture below, there is an example of the use of whole objects by using a diaper, a picture symbol of a girl who is signing girl with a pink background, and then a picture symbol representing a toilet.
You also can't see it in the picture, but there's a clear overlay of Braille that says girl and bathroom. This symbol is a great example of how we can combine a lot of different modes of communication that different students are using to make one clear label for something that everyone's using, such as the bathroom. It's one thing to have in their individual areas their communication, very clear, their objects or their picture symbols, but in a shared space such as the bathroom or maybe the play area or the kitchen, we need to represent a lot of different things at the same time. We try to do that without making it too cluttered. This is actually a pretty large symbol mounted on black plastic to keep the visual clutter low, but still make it accessible to the students. And the diaper is actually removable with Velcro, so the student can pull it off and fully explore the whole object if they're not up to mounted objects. So how do we put all of this together? We have a wide variety of learners within our current preschool class, and we do some group activities where all of the students participate. One of those activities is our morning circle. Every morning, our students participate in our morning circle, and they take turns to say hello, to pick from our circle bag, which contains objects that relate to our thematic monthly unit, and turns to say goodbye. It's a great opportunity for them to practice their greeting, to practice social skills such as waiting and acknowledging their peers, choice making, and overall communication. So we incorporate a lot of different communication styles within our morning circle, and you'll see some examples of that. Throughout everything, we're using sign language and speech, as well as pairing the students' mode of communication when we're focusing on each of them when they take a turn. The first video you'll see is a student who's using whole objects to communicate. During morning circle, she follows a 3-step sequence where she starts on the left and she takes her name symbol to represent her turn to say hello. In the middle is the circle bag that she takes as her indication that she's ready for her turn to pick. And on the end, it's a little instrument that she plays when we sing the goodbye song. It's very meaningful to the student, and the whole objects really just help her follow along and have a lot of meaning for her. Instead of just asking her to sign, she might, her body, she's not really sure where her body is in space, and paying attention to the signing from the teachers with all the other peers around can sometimes be too visually overwhelming for her. So using this whole object sequence board is a great way for her to have a meaningful participation within Morning Circle.
My turn to say hello. Here. Good job, Molly. Your turn to say hello. Can we sign? Ready? We'll do my turn. Nice job, Molly. Hello to Molly, hello. Hello to Molly, hello. We're gonna sing and play and have a great day. Hello to Molly, hello.
So you can see the student is also working on simple signs. So once she took her picture symbol, which is very meaningful to her, she chose her texture, which is a soft purple fabric. She picked that when she started from a bunch of different symbols. She loves taking her name symbol. She recognizes it. She actually gives a little kiss when she sees it, which shows that she recognizes herself and really enjoys it. So we're also trying to promote some simple signing. She is getting her hand up into position, and then you can see Amanda is helping her follow through to complete the sign.
So in this video, you will see a student using picture symbols. He is working on following steps from left to right, and the first picture symbol is going to be a person signing hello. The second symbol is a person signing pick, and then the third symbol is a person waving goodbye.
And he has the understanding to be able to recognize the sign representations within those picture symbols. And for this student, it was a great way. He is working on signing too, but he was pretty tactily defensive about learning the signs and just a little stubborn about it. But this gave him full control. He can take it when he wants and he knows it's his turn. And you'll see he really enjoys taking his turn.
You can take hello. Oh, Amir wants a turn. Ready? We can sign. Ready? My turn! Good job. Name symbol. Ready? Hello, Amir, hello. Hello, Amir, hello. We're gonna sing and play and have a great day. Hello, Amir, hello.
Using the communication mode that was the best for him has really helped him expand what he's willing to do and how much he wants to participate. You can see he's really enjoying himself and he's understanding the mode he's using, which is the most important thing. This next video shows a medium tech using a voice output switch. So this student is using his hearing and vision. When he hears the cue, who wants a turn, he presses a switch. He actually uses his elbow to push back due to mobility issues. We found that that is the best position for him. And he pays attention, and you can see he tries really hard, and he gets his switch pressed, and he enjoys taking his turn to say hello.
Who wants a turn to say hello? I think I'll press my switch. It's my turn. Good job, Brady. I have your picture with your shiny green. Alright, you want to hold on to it while we sing? Ready? Hello to Brady, hello. Hello to Brady, hello. We're going to sing and play and have a great day. Hello to Brady, hello. Nice job.
You can see we also used a little bit of a touch cue there. He can do it on his own, but sometimes he just needs his body needs that reminder of where it is in space and what body part he needs to move to press the switch.
In this next video, you will see a student using touch cues. At the beginning of the clip, Megan offers his name symbol and waits for him to reach out towards it. This student needs a light tap on the outside of his hand to help open it up and bring it up to his chest.
Nolan, do you want to turn to say hello? Take your name. Can you sign my turn? Get your hand up. You got it. Do my turn. My turn. Great job, Nolan. Hello to Nolan, hello. Hello to Nolan, hello. We're gonna sing and play and have a great day. Hello to Nolan, hello. Nolan, nice job. This next video shows a student who's using simple signs to take a turn. Similarly to the last video, this student is first being prompted for their turn by reaching out for their name symbol, which is very familiar to them. And then he's working on his simple sign for my turn, just bringing a flat hand to his chest, and he's needing less and less prompting for it, which you'll see in this video. Do you want to turn to say hello? It's my turn. Take your name. Oh, you're reaching for your name, so let's sign my turn. Great job, Ben. Do it again. Ready? Do it together. My turn. Sing, ready? Hello to Ben, hello. Hello to Ben, hello. We're gonna sing and play and have a great day. Hello to Ben, hello. You can see my excitement in this video for how proud I am of him completing his simple sign. He typically needs a little more prompting than that, usually just a cue around the elbow, some guidance to bring his hand in, but he's really starting to make that connection between taking his name and signing my turn.
Gestures and receptive sign. So in this video, the student will be using a combination of watching and understanding my sign language, and then gesturing for asking for a turn. He's going to reach out and grab my hand and bring it to his chest to sign my turn together.
My turn. Nice job, Owen. You take your name. Where's Owen? Good job. Hold on to it while we sing. Good job. Right. Hello to Owen, hello. Hello to Owen, hello. We're gonna sing and play and have a great day. Hello to Owen, hello. Nice job.
And this student, again, is using a name symbol that he is familiar with, and he is so engaged as I sign and really understanding and participating in this activity.
You can see how clearly he's watching Amanda signing. He is a great example of a student who's using two different modalities. He most expressively is using gestures and some simple signs, but receptively, he's taking in a lot of sign language, and you can tell he's really starting to understand the signs, and he might eventually become more of an expressive sign user also. This last video shows an example of a student using tactile sign language. He's using tactile sign language to receptively understand the question, and then he's using simple signs to expressively ask for a turn.
Now you're signing my turn to say hello. To say hello. Nice awesome job, Yandy. Hey, we're going to find Yandy's name. Where's your name? Oh, is that you? There's your picture. All right, we're going to say hello to Yandy. Hello to Yandy. Hello. Hello.
So this student, you can see, is using a lot of different modes of communication. He's using tactile sign receptively, he's using simple signs expressively, and he's also using tactile symbols. He can identify his name symbol from a field of the 10 students in the class. And you'll note the positioning in this video. I'm sitting across from him, so it's more natural to sign with him. And then he can move himself around. He positions himself, so he has one hand signing with me while he's picking his name symbol from a field of 2. Communication leads to community. That is, to understanding, intimacy, and mutual valuing. Total communication allows all of our students to express themselves to the most fullest extent possible. We really focus on individualizing everything we do to our students, from one-to-one lessons to group activities to what they enjoy doing during playtime and art, and all of that really focuses around our total communication approach to learning. It's so important to remember that each of these wonderful students are individuals. They learn at their own pace, and they might use a big variety of communication modes, or they might use just one. There's no right or wrong, and whatever the student is using to communicate is right for him or her. Total communication is an important part of every day and should be used all day, every day, with every student. I know it can be an overwhelming concept with so many different modes of communication, but as you saw with our examples, there's a way to incorporate all different modes of communication on an individual basis and across group settings. And we're happy to be able to provide that way for students to be able to express themselves every day. Thank you.
Thank you.